Check it out on YouTube, my social media, or just listen to it on Spotify.
Great.
Alrighty, so 1 second, and now we are recording in three, two. Welcome to another episode of Million Dollar Stories, where we get to interview authors from all over the world. And the more we look at society, I think some things that we've seen in movies are coming to life. Terminator, for example, Terminator 1, Terminator 2, based off of AI. And now that AI is really becoming a part of our life, individuals are saying, oh my God, John Connor was right. So, this book that we're going to be talking about is Innovation Plus Equality: How to Create a Future That is More Star Trek than Terminator. And one of the authors here with us is Andrew Lay. Thank you so much for being here. So I really appreciate your time. I love the title, love the subtitle, love the content.
Thank you, Mike. Great to be with you. And Joshua Gans, my co-author, sends his best.
Oh, very nice. Okay. So what made you guys get down and put it all on paper about what this the future can look like? I mean, you do mention how the more there's innovation, I mean, is there inequality as a byproduct, and maybe there's some things that can be fixed there.
Mike, I think people have often told the story that if you're going to have an innovative society, it's just inevitable that the rich will race ahead of the rest. But actually, that's not the story of human progress. We've had big periods, such as the decades after World War II, where we had a lot of innovation, huge numbers of inventions changing people's lives. The rollout of the car, of automobile, a big increase in air travel. You think of the invention of the Concorde and a person setting foot on the moon. And yet all of that was happening in decades where America and most other advanced countries were becoming more equal, not more unequal. So we don't think that inequality is simply the price of progress. And we think with the right set of policies, you can have a fair society and an exciting entrepreneurial one at the same time.
Nice. Yeah, and I know that I mean, I think it's an exciting time to be alive right now. As an entrepreneur, there's so much possibility. We have so many tools and resources. And, obviously the internet's one thing, but social media is a whole nother game. And then you have AI in there. I'm not afraid of it. I'm really looking at it as such a tool. It's like a sword that if I master it now, it'll give me such an advantage in the workplace. And is that how you look at it? That this is a great time to be alive, even though it's chaotic. This is a wild time. It's like sort of like the Wild West of entrepreneurship. Is that how you view it too?
Mike, I'm fundamentally an optimist. Frankly, I think you've got to be an optimist to succeed in politics. And I am excited by the potential of the new technologies. Economists like me talk about general purpose technologies. The steam engine, electricity, and artificial intelligence is another one like that. What marks out a general purpose technology is that when you invent it, you don't really know what it can be used for. And what's really amazing is seeing all of the interesting use cases for artificial intelligence. My family uses it to help us plan holidays. My son, 11-year-old son, and I enjoy sitting down doing digital art together. I find artificial intelligence a great editor. When I've written something, I'll put it in and ask it to make it spicier or take out the cliches. It's terrific at coming up with headlines and tweets. It's bad at some things. Legal scholars have gotten into trouble because it's hopeless at legal citations and academic citations. But the fact is, the artificial intelligence we're using right now is the worst we'll ever use in our lives. And the potential of what we can do to become a more productive society is really exciting. And to the Innovation Plus Equality book, some of the experiments that have been done on artificial intelligence suggest that the biggest productivity boost comes from the workers who were scoring the lowest at the outset. So it might actually be an equalizing technology in the workplace.
Give the audience, people watching it live or the people listening to it on Spotify, a little bit of a background of who you are, where you come from, and actually what you're doing now. You said 14 years of being in the political sphere and still being an optimist. I commend you for that, because most likely I've seen individuals get into politics and they lose their soul. I can still see there's still life in your eyes. So give us the rundown, please.
So I was born in Australia, trained as an attorney, worked as a clerk on the equivalent of our Supreme Court. and then made the transition into economics. I did my PhD at Harvard, worked as an economics professor in Australia, and then entered politics in 2010. And then since our government changed in 2022, I've served an assistant minister in the government. I continue to write books. I've written about a dozen books, some of them co-authored, like Innovation Plus Equality, and focused on economics broadly defined. So, Mike, I guess I try and straddle those worlds of being a professor and being a politician. I love the world of power, but I'm also fascinated by the world of ideas.
Nice. Yeah, and so Joshua, is he more in the entrepreneurial space too? I don't know much about him. He's more of an economist too, then I guess, right?
That's right. Joshua is a fabulous economist working out of the University of Toronto, co-leading their creative destruction lab. So he sees a lot of innovators up close and sees what works, particularly in the mentoring space. One of his big catch cries is that the creative destruction lab brings entrepreneurs together with mentors in order to provide judgment. The budding entrepreneurs have a whole lot of ideas, but they need the judgment to narrow down what they're going to focus on. And that's what the Creative Destruction Lab provides. And it's been really successful in creating a whole lot of successful startups as a result.
So I've interviewed many people in regards to leadership, and we've all kind of summarized that leaders really paint the vision. We assemble the tribe, and then we give the tribe the resources to make the vision come to life. You know, and if the vision is attractive enough and energizing enough, there's a cohesiveness amongst the tribe, and therefore there's a want to slay the dragons ahead. When it comes to painting the vision of what you see, when it comes to this Star Trek vision, what is the ideal outcome? Are you looking to implement some things that have never been implemented, or are there certain things that are happening that we just need to duplicate and do it over and over? And if that's the case, where is that happening?
So what's great about Star Trek is it's a society that's more advanced than ours, that has higher standards of decency and a sense of kindness about it. I think we can achieve that while achieving much higher levels of material living standards as well. I don't think it needs to be the case that as growth goes up, that we need to become more of a dog-eat-dog society, whether you're talking about the United States or Australia. We have many examples around, if we think about life indicators, of where human standards have gone up. We're a much less sexist, much less racist, much less homophobic societies than we were a couple of decades ago. Human heights have gone up and prosperity has increased. But in order for that to continue, we've got to make sure that education keeps pace with technology. One of the big challenges is if education stagnates and technology advances, that can widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots. We've got to make sure that people have skills that allow them to work in with the machines, and also that there's a reasonable distribution of the ownership of capital. One of the things that artificial intelligence could do is massively increase the rate of return to capital compared to labour. So we need to make sure we've got a fair distribution of resources so all of us get to share in those gains.
Got it. Okay. So in my opinion, it all starts with education. I believe everything can be fixed if you give individuals all the same information that the wealthy and the rich are living by right now. I always talk about Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that's the one that set me free. And I look at all the other people that I'm surrounded by, and they all love that book. But when I look at individuals who are in the public school system or people who are struggling, they have never heard of that book. They've never heard of Tony Robbins. They've never heard of some of the most successful people like Napoleon Hill, even Think and Grow Rich. And it makes me wonder, why is that the case? So I believe the way to make a very happy outcome 50 years from now, 100 years from now, is get everybody on the same page mentally on what actually creates wealth and what creates freedom. Do you agree with my sentiment?
I think education is immensely important. I might put a little bit more emphasis on the education system than on some of the self-taught people. I found the books you talk about really interesting to read, but I think nothing beats having great teachers in every classroom. One study by Raj Chetty and co-authors looks at the impact on earnings of having a good teacher compared to a not so good teacher, and discovers that a superstar teacher, in terms of the earnings they produce, are literally worth their weight in gold. This is a remarkable finding, and one that points to the importance of attracting and retaining great people into schools. We haven't always done that as societies, and that's one of the reasons why test scores have tended to flatline, because we haven't focused on getting the very best in. And yet, if you look at a country like Finland, they're consistently drawing their teachers from the top 10th of the educational distribution. And they're drawing people into teaching who, in other countries, are the kinds of people who'd be going into merchant banking or dentistry. Not to say we don't need good merchant bankers and good dentists, but having fantastic teachers really is the bedrock, because teaching is the profession that builds all other professions.
Wow. So you're saying it starts with the teachers more than anything. And so you need to attract good teachers, right? What is Finland doing that the United States isn't doing?
Yeah, so part of what Finland is doing is the status. Teaching is a very high status profession, but it's also well remunerated, and teachers are well supported. So it's about providing an environment in which great people want to go into teaching, because they're not just going to be doing paperwork, they're going to be educational leaders changing the community. There's parts of countries which have done that. Our education minister in Australia, Jason Clare, is trying to do that for a whole series of initiatives. One I really like is when he goes to college graduations, he gets the college to have the graduating seniors nominate a teacher that made a difference in their lives. And then the award-winning teachers will be brought up on stage and acknowledged in front of their pupils. It's just another way of giving back and reinforcing that cycle, that to be a great teacher is an extraordinary vocation. And indeed, when you're talking about all those terrific books there, Mike, one of the problems we've got right now is that fewer and fewer people are even reading books at all. And so if you don't have a great education, you may not be the kind of person that ever thinks about walking into a bookstore. And that's a tragedy.
Yeah, the average person, I forget what it is, but the average person never reads a book outside of high school ever again. Think about how crazy that is.
Right. And the lost potential that represents.
Yeah, and I look at entrepreneurship and just classify just finances in general is based off of your personal development journey. If you're not reading and writing and trying to better you as a person, the money's not going to automatically flow. So it's pretty amazing that school, I think, has not done a great job in showing the benefits of learning to become more articulate and learn to read and write with passion, because that'll serve you in every aspect of life. So I do say it does start with education. Maybe something needs done, maybe a revamp, or maybe, like you said, where teachers need to be held up to and edified more. Maybe that's probably the best way to put it. So interesting perspective there. So where are you located at right now?
I'm in Canberra, the capital of Australia.
Got it. Okay. So
I'm actually speaking to you from the National Parliament, my office here.
Oh, very nice. Okay. So what are you doing over there that's becoming significant? Because I looked at Australia in 2020 up until 2022. There's it seemed like a lot of lockdowns. I don't even know if you were doing the homeschooling as much, or just seemed like a lot of chaos was over there. So maybe I have a bad viewpoint, of what's going on, but is there something that's happening in Australia that's really, really positive that maybe us people in the United States should adopt?
Yeah, there's a couple of things in the innovation and education space where I think we're doing interesting things. One is making sure we're attracting and retaining great teachers. Another is in improving access to college. We don't have student loans operating the way they do in the United States. Instead, in Australia, they're what's called an income contingent loan. So when you go to college, you don't pay anything up front. Your debts are through the tax system, and you don't start paying back until you pass average earnings. If you lose your job, your loan repayments immediately stop. So that income contingent loan has been, in our view, a pretty good way of expanding the system, but without leaving people with the sorts of crippling debts that you see in the US college system.
Yeah.
We're also looking at ways of encouraging more people into entrepreneurship through entrepreneurship years, startup year after college, providing opportunities there. And looking too at opportunities to allow more Australians to travel to Southeast Asia. A lot of our best entrepreneurs are engaging with the region. We're in the fastest growing region of the world, so we're looking at how we get more people engaging there. But you've got an awful lot to teach us too. You know, my wife's American. I travel to America 1 or 2 times a year, and I'm always struck by the entrepreneurial zeal in the place, the energy, not just in Silicon Valley, but so many other innovative places across the US.
Wow, you bring up an awesome point, and I'm glad you did. If you make it so society has adopted that maybe individuals should really try to start a business, just make them feel more entrepreneurial from the get-go. I think that will solve so many problems. And whether it's a class or an automatic next step of helping you start a business, if individuals all over the world start to think like an entrepreneur, they will realize that they are the hero of their own story. They will not be reliant upon government and maybe outside sources for funds and resources to get them from from level to the next. If they serve a group of people and make other people's lives better, their life becomes better as a byproduct. So, man, I think that is an awesome idea. And I don't know how many of our schools are doing something like that. So I commend you. Think like an entrepreneur. That's a phrase that we live by in this company, even within my team. Think like an entrepreneur, because where there's chaos, there's opportunity, and there's always going to be fires. Somebody needs to be the fireman, right?
One of our universities, the University of Technology Sydney, is aiming to give half of its students a startup experience. So, Mike, this is quite different from the way startup programs work at a lot of colleges. A lot of colleges' startup programs are just focused on the engineers. There's the University of Technology Sydney is saying, well, why don't you have an entrepreneurial experience for somebody who's in nursing or somebody who's in teaching? It's not like these fields don't need more entrepreneurship. So it's looking at ways of providing entrepreneurship opportunities for people right across the university. Not 100%, but 50% is a massive goal. And it's really interesting to see how they're going about that.
Yeah. And when you talk about the wealth cap, I'm always fascinated by individuals who say, well, in order to fix that, you just tax the rich. All right. And I'm kind of blown away because I know people who, if they went bankrupt tomorrow and they lost hundreds of millions of dollars, they would have it back in a year. And the reason why, it has nothing to do with what they built. It's who they had to become to build it, and all the information that they learned, the connections they've made. So wealth to me is like a snowball. And it's like the more you just have time on your side, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's really no way to stop it. So there's no way to fix it unless you get other people to build their own snowball too. Is that how you look at it? What's your views?
Yeah. One of my favorite studies talks about lost Einsteins. The idea that if you look across the US, there are places where people seem to be starting up businesses at a much higher rate. Startups are strongly related to your parents' experience and to the place where you are, which means that there's a lot of potential entrepreneurs out there who don't get access to the mentors or the capital that they need to start their firms. So expanding that opportunity isn't just good for equity, it's also good for growth. We provide a chance to make it for kids who might otherwise just not have seen someone who'd started a business, not have access to the money that they need to grow. Finding those lost Marie Curies and the lost Albert Einsteins is a pretty awesome mission.
So what got you into politics? You seem like you have the entrepreneur's heart. So how did you enter that crazy world?
I've always been interested in politics. My background, my parents were always talking about issues of politics around the dining table. We lived in Indonesia and Malaysia as a child, and so I guess that influenced my outlook on the world and fascination with topics like inequality. And then politics is just an amazing roller coaster. It's a chance to meet an extraordinary array of people, in a typical day, I might be talking about multiculturalism or post boxes or population. It is the most diverse and interesting job you'll ever know. It can be exhausting at times, but it's an amazing privilege, Mike.
Yeah, and I think before we hit the record button, you were saying like, sometimes when it comes to entrepreneurship, politics does play a factor. And maybe whenever it comes to regulations, what's coming down the road here in the future, how to make the best decisions under regulatory pressures. What do you say to entrepreneurs out there? I mean, I think that the more you're in the game of business, you have to be in the world of politics to some degree. So the more you understand the world, the better you make decisions, plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to say is that your local politicians are always going to be keen to hear from a successful entrepreneur. They're not. It's not going to be a hard sell to knock on their door and have a conversation with them or their staff about the issues you're facing. Whether you're talking about Democrats or Republicans in your country, Labor or Liberal people in my country, there is a commitment to making sure that people are able to start a business and succeed.
I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think that's everywhere, just so you know. And from where I come from, holy moly, I think if you're on one side of the fence or the other, they're willing to listen to you, just so you know. But keep going. I'm sorry to cut you off there.
Maybe, look, maybe that's true at some high level, talking about high level policies. But if you're on the grassroots, Mike, if you go along to your local representative and you say, I've just started a business and I want to talk to you about it, I'd be very surprised if you encounter a politician who thinks it's anything but great to start a business in the local district. So if you've got an issue, don't engage expecting they're going to be able to solve it tomorrow. Engage looking to form a relationship. Say to them, I'd like to solve this. I know it's not straightforward, but there's this regulation that's really getting in my way. There's crash or crash through approaches like you see Uber putting in place. So Uber's approach to regulation is just to break the regulation and then hope it catches up. That worked for them, but that's not the way it's going to work for most entrepreneurs. For most entrepreneurs, you're going to have to play by the rules. And if there's a rule that's stymieing your business, then it's important that the politicians know about it. Most people who go into politics aren't stupid. They're not corrupt. They want to do the right thing. And an honest conversation with a smile on your face is going to smarten up their knowledge of your business and is going to give you a better chance of making a difference. Getting multiple businesses together, if it looks like you're not working as one, getting a group of 5 businesses together and going as a delegation or writing a shared letter, that can have a big impact too. So there's some of the ways of engaging with politics. But one of the things I notice is that there's a lot of businesses doing very well in my electorate who never come to see me because they're perfectly happy with the regulations the way they are, and that's just fine.
So in this book, it says they outline ways that society can become more entrepreneurial and egalitarian. Now, when it comes to becoming more entrepreneurial, I believe that we are entering this gig economy, and maybe individuals have to dip their toes in that water for them to really find out that they're good at it / they love it. And I think the Ubers of the world and maybe the Fivers of the world are doing a great service to individuals to have supplemental income, but also to figure out that they don't have to be so reliant upon one source. And that might open the door to a whole new life of multiple revenue streams, thus freedom. So is that one thing that you recommend? Just start to dip your toe in the water of jumping into the gig economy. Saturday nights, work here, do this, become a 1099 contractor, and then maybe take that money and start to invest it in other opportunities and in assets. What's your belief? And maybe is there 1, 2, or 3 steps that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, so I certainly think the gig economy has opened up a lot more opportunities for a lot of people. There's no reason why the gig economy ought to make an end run around worker safety and minimum wage laws. But in many cases, it provides new sources of income. You look at the people making a living off selling things on eBay or renting a spare room off Airbnb. All of that's providing additional income that didn't exist beforehand. And one of the things we know, Mike, is that when people are starting off in careers, they don't tend to try enough things. They don't tend to spend enough time just a couple of days in a particular workplace, a few conversations with someone else. We need to try many more things. It's not just about finding who will like you, it's also finding out more about yourself. So my standard advice to young people looking at career paths is try more things. Don't focus on a single thing. You're more, as in love, you're more likely to find exactly the right fit if you look around a little bit.
Yeah. So kiss a lot of frogs is what you're saying, man, right?
Precisely.
Yeah. And I think the more society adopts the entrepreneurial mentality, or like they look at that as an actual career that you want to take, it becomes more socially acceptable. I would think 30, 40 years ago, if you said that you were an entrepreneur, people were like, what the hell's an entrepreneur? And you must be broke, is probably how people thought of it, right?
Yeah, right. And that can still happen, but the potential is huge. So I was in Sydney yesterday with one of my best friends who's starting a white label bank. They've got about 80 employees right now, and he was just talking about the hard work and the stress. The fact that every time payroll hits, suddenly the bank balance has dropped, and you're waiting for the next amount of money to come in. But also the potential that he might well change the lives of those 80 people, and of course all of the customers that they can serve. He's aiming to shake up banking in Australia, and that's a pretty exciting mission to wake up in the morning for. And that's just one of a whole host of entrepreneurial stories going on around the country.
Well, one thing that I think is kind of scary, and it's for the average person who's trying to get a job, right? And they maybe have a career in something that AI is going to take over, and they might not even realize it right now. They're in school, they have this degree they're about to get, and AI is going to wipe them out whether they realize it or not. So I think jobs by nature are going to be on a decline. Technology has completely changed everything, where so much is being automated. Even whenever it comes to Amazon, I mean, I'm watching robots take over 20, 30 different people's jobs like instantly, right? So, and they don't ever go to sleep. They don't ever take a break. And it's wild to see that it's happening at this rate. So, as a politician, I know you're always worried about job count and jobs in your certain area. Is it something that we have to get used to of, yeah, we need to now maybe become more decentralized and start to work from home and maybe start to have different investments and businesses going for everybody, even though maybe we're not all entrepreneurs at heart. It's just something that we might have to adopt as a society, because jobs, no matter how much we want to, are not going to be on the incline because of technology. What do you think?
Mike, you're in good company in thinking that technology might kill jobs. John Maynard Keynes had that view. A group of prominent economists wrote to Lyndon Johnson in 1964 saying that coming technology changes were going to lead to mass unemployment. But we're yet to see it with any of the big waves of technology that have hit. Right now, AI is shaking up a lot of things, but the number of people who have directly lost their jobs as a result of AI is pretty close to zero. Maybe this one will be different. Every time we get a new technology wave, we think, okay, this is going to be the one that'll take the jobs. But computerization didn't wipe them out. What it did was change jobs. When I started work as a junior lawyer in the early 1990s, there were typing pools in the law firm I worked in. A group of people dedicated to typing up memos and letters based on the dictaphone recordings that the lawyers were making. Computers were put on people's desks, and the typing pools disappeared. But those people who worked in the typing pools didn't go join the unemployment lines. Instead, they found new jobs arranging travel, doing more strategic work. And I think they actually had better jobs than the typists had before. So we're constantly losing jobs. The lighthouse keepers, the signal operators of the past are gone. But then we're creating jobs. The new game designers, the fitness instructors, the social media influencers. Your job didn't exist 30 years ago. So all of these roles are emerging with technology. And I'm ultimately a job optimist. I think so long as we've got good education in place, and that education is general training, not specific training, then people are going to be able to move to the jobs of the future. I might be wrong, but that's my optimistic take.
Yeah, I think we're resourceful, right? We're versatile. We've been around for, people say, millions of years, and I think we will adjust accordingly. It's just the inequality gap is just bound to happen. And is there any trend that you're noticing outside of maybe the finances, or maybe the fact that people just aren't reading as much, or maybe individuals are reading at a lower level than ever before because they're so reliant on technology to do everything for them? Is there any trend that really scares you and that you are devoting a lot of resources to figuring out and fixing in Australia right now as a politician?
Yeah, well, the one that springs immediately to mind, Mike, is the increasingly addictive nature of social media technologies. These little devices in our pockets are sucking more and more of our time into fundamentally unproductive activities. And we've seen changes even just in the last year. So the algorithmic response to the rise of TikTok has been that the share of general content compared to followed content is going up on places, platforms like X and Meta. Instagram Reels are far more addictive than they were a year or two ago because you're getting not the best bit of content from your friends, you're getting the best bit of content from the entire world. And often that is a really funny or entertaining bit of content. The thing is, the more time you spend sucked into the social media vortex, the less time you have for your in-person friends, the less time you have for building those trusted relationships, the less time you have for building a business. So dealing with these terrifyingly addictive technologies, I think, is a matter for individuals. Turn off the notifications, charge your phone outside your bedroom, all those sort of good tips. But it's also a question for policymakers. These things are as addictive as cigarettes. And when it came to cigarettes, we didn't just say, well, that's a problem for individual willpower. Government actually looked at how we could help. And right now, I think that's a big challenge, which is sucking a lot of brain power into unproductive activities.
Wow, good point on that. I think depression levels are skyrocketing, mental health is declining, suicides are going up, and individuals, I mean, you could really point to social media as such a game changer and how the hierarchies are adjusted, but how people look at themselves, how they're treated. The social pressures are at an all-time high, starting at what, 13 years old, 12 years old? I know some people have social media at 9 years old. I mean, it's insanity. So, it's only going to get worse unless something happens. And it seems like you're trying to fix that right away.
Yeah, we have a rule in our household that you don't get a smartphone until you turn 15, which means that our kids end up being the last in their social group to get a phone. But it also means that they go to parties where they watch all their other friends staring mindlessly into their hands, and they see what a huge amount of wasted time that is. I think we as a society can do more in order to get this right. I'm sure you wrestle with this. I know I find myself staring at my phone for too long, but rarely do I get to the end of the day and think, the real problem with today was I didn't spend enough time browsing social media.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's scary though because I'll find myself like it's not more about entertainment, it's about information. I feel like I don't know if you've ever seen Batman Forever, I think it is, but there's the Joker, Jim Carrey, and he's just soaking up all the rays. And it feels like every time I learn something cool and I share it, and it's like it's adding value to me, it's like a dopamine hit. So I'm scrolling social media for facts and stats and ways to grow my business. And I know that's not good on a long enough timeline. So just being aware of it and mitigating it as much as possible, I think is crucial. I just can't imagine for kids though. I mean, do you really want to go outside and go in the woods and get dirty if you have everything you've ever wanted right here on a phone when you're 10 years old? I feel bad for kids that grow up with a phone because I was able to grow up in the woods. It's just, how do you ever take that out of their hands and then put them back into the old days? It's going to be tough, man. So, last
Yeah,
question. Last question I have for you is mental health. I know this is something politicians are always wrestling with, but when it comes to pharmaceuticals and kids getting medication, I just think whatever is going on right now is not working in the United States. I have no data about Australia. Are you guys doing well with the mental health or pharmaceuticals and ADD and pills given to kids, or are you just as bad off as the United States as is right now?
We've seen a big worsening of youth mental health, same trajectory as the United States, same trajectory as a lot of other advanced countries. And I buy the argument that Jonathan Haidt has in his book, The Anxious Generation, that social media, while not being the entire cause of this, is the number one culprit. What do? Well, we get the phones out of schools. We encourage parents not to give their kids smartphones too young. And then we encourage getting out in the woods. So I started the day today, Mike, with a run in the Bush Reserve outside our house.
I like your style.
I saw a couple of kangaroos. They still put a smile on my face, even though I see them every day. Ran with the birds. And just came back with a bit of a sense of being grounded. That's the experience that potentially you can miss out on if you're spending too much time on devices. I'm a triathlete. I'm tapering down now for a 70.3 on Sunday. And that experience of exercise really is, for me, what grounds me in a mental health sense. And what I see as being to a large extent the solution to anxiety and depression.
Wow, good point. Get outside, take care of your body. I mean, it's amazing how, your state of mind is based off of your physical activity. So if you start to really focus on your health, everything kind of gets better as a byproduct. So, yeah, I'm with you. I try to get outside and run 4 to 5 times per week, and even running in the cold. I know right now it's beautiful where you're at, right? It's gorgeous.
Sure is. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in the last few days of summer here.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's 35, 45 on average here right now, but I love being outside, being one with nature. I think we need to do that. And as soon as we get away from it, that's when depression sinks in. Last question I have for you, though, is a book outside of your own book that you recommend, maybe one that put you on this path to either becoming an entrepreneur or one as a politician. What do you recommend?
I just loved Bonnie Garmus's Lessons from Chemistry. It's one of my favorite books about women as scientists. We haven't talked too much about gender, but her tales about not only a female scientist in the 1950s and 1960s, but also the way she raises her child with a love of science. There's a lot in that to inspire. Gabrielle Zevins' Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow last year was also a fabulous novel, a couple of coders, and entrepreneurial story, but woven through a love story, tragedy, just a beautiful novel. I'd encourage your listeners to read as much fiction as you can. It's good for the soul.
See, if you listen to my podcast, I'm always preaching nonfiction. So we have somebody at least is saying you got to read fiction too. And I was just out recently with somebody that says, I haven't read a nonfiction book my entire life. I'm all about fiction. I'm like, I got to change that in you. So, maybe there is some good in there. Anyways, thank you so much for your time. The book, guys, is called Innovation Plus Equality: How to Create a Future That is More Star Trek Than Terminator. And what's wild is I think I see a little bit of both right now. So hopefully it does become more Star Trek related. Is social media, website, anything that you recommend for people to get in touch with you?
I'm on the modestly named andrewleigh.com, ANDREWLEIGH.com, and I'm on Twitter as ALeighMP.
Alrighty. So you are it's on X. You're an X guy then, huh? Okay. I'm glad I talked to people who are still using that consistently. It's good. But anyways,
very good.
Thank you very much for your time today, Andrew. And guys, check out his book. Really good person on a mission. And yeah, if you could support him, pick up the book and learn a few things. Remember, $1 million book will lead to $1 million life. Right on.